Good morning. I'm Bob Mecklenborg, representative 30th House District and also chair of the State Government and Elections Committee. The State Government and Elections Committee has had two bills so far, and today I'm pleased to announce that there will be a third bill, which hopefully will get referred to this committee. It hasn't been referred yet. And this is the Uniform Military and Overseas Voting Act. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill, but there are two sponsors of this bill, Representative Mike Dovilla to my right and Representative Stinziano to my left. And I think it should be noted that both of these representatives are freshmen, and this is a very serious and significant bill, and one that it's very much an honor to have freshmen carry. So I'm very pleased. They've both been very, very productive members of the State Government and Elections Committee thus far. And one from each party, for those of you keeping score. And I'll turn it over to the sponsors of this important piece of legislation.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. I'm State Representative Mike Dovilla, representing the 18th House District here in the Ohio House. And I'm pleased to be joined this morning by my friend, Representative Michael Stinziano from the 25th District here in the Columbus area. Each May we recognize on Armed Forces Day those who serve our nation in our military, and we remember on Memorial Day those who've made the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of our nation. And today, in addition to recognizing and remembering, we respect the right of those individuals to participate in one of the most important civic duties that we have as Americans, and that's the right and the responsibility to vote. This morning, Representative Stinziano and I will introduce legislation to implement changes to Ohio's Uniform Military and Overseas Voting Law to make it more accurately reflect recommendations made by the Federal Voting Assistance Program. This legislation will make a number of important changes to Ohio law. First, it will permit a uniformed services or overseas voter to apply for an absentee ballot by email or through internet delivery. Secondly, it will require boards of elections to accept and process federal write-in absentee ballots for all elections for federal, state, or local office and for all ballot questions and issues. Third, we'll establish an emergency process for uniformed services and overseas voters to cast a ballot if an international, national, state, or local emergency arises that makes substantial compliance with the federal absent voting law impossible or impracticable. And finally, it will permit a uniformed services or overseas voter to use the declaration accompanying a federal write-in absentee ballot to apply or register to vote simultaneously with the submission of the federal write-in absentee ballot. Now, this is just one of the ways that we can honor the military members within our communities. And while these brave individuals are protecting our country and our families around the globe, we have a duty to protect their ability to vote. Their willingness to defend our freedoms, including at the ballot box, underscores the importance of this effort to allow their voices to be heard in each and every election. And for me, this bill has personal significance. During my deployment to Iraq in 2007, I fell victim to the current process for military and overseas voting when, through no fault of my own, and despite a proactive effort to obtain a ballot, I was disenfranchised in that year's municipal elections. Since that time, I vowed that if I were ever in a position to be able to address this public policy challenge and prevent it from happening to others in the military service, I would do so. And today we take that step. So I'm pleased to have this opportunity to have such broad bipartisan support from all over the state of Ohio as we introduce this bill to help move our elections process forward for those who serve on the front lines in faraway lands. At this time, I would like to introduce and invite my colleague, Representative Stinziano, to make some remarks. And Michael is also uniquely positioned due to his professional experience on the Franklin County Board of Elections for a number of years to offer much needed perspective on this particular bill. Representative Stinziano.
I also want to identify Representative Martin, who's here, and also a co-sponsor of the legislation. Very excited to be here today to introduce this legislation with Representative Dovilla. This bill establishes excellent policy and represents a strong move forward by the state of Ohio that would make our state election laws more accessible for a segment of our community who have been struggling to have their votes properly cast. Around the world, over 5 million military and overseas civilians face a variety of legal and logistical obstacles to participate in American elections, primarily due to state laws, resulting in historically lower participation by military and overseas voters compared to the general U.S. population. In Ohio, according to data available by the Ohio Secretary of State's website, in 2010, of the state's 1.1 million absentee voters, there were 9,883 military and overseas ballots cast. What is important to note, however, is that the return rate for non-military and overseas ballots was 93%. In contrast, the return rate for military and overseas ballots, those individuals this legislation is meant to address, was only 45%. These are troubling statistics and point to our need for the type of policies identified in this legislation, such as online return of military and overseas absentee ballots. In addition, these enhancements to Ohio election law are worthwhile because they are the result of recommendations made by interested parties who saw the low and troubling numbers across the country and sought innovative solutions to increase participation. As Representative Dovilla identified, there are key components, so I won't go through those today. But also, as he identified, that I do have the experience of being an administrator, having served as the director of the Franklin County Board of Elections. And to that extent, I've seen firsthand and have had additional conversations with overseas voters about the need for greater accessibility and participation for this community. From an administrative perspective, we always knew there was more that should be done. Often it was not until deadlines were pressing that individuals like Representative Dovilla would identify, contact the Board of Elections, and raise the concern about their ability to cast a ballot. And at the same time, there was this recognition of the constant moving and remote location that particularly our military find themselves when they're trying to participate. While boards of elections do everything they could, the laws as currently written were not as favorable for those voters. It should not be difficult for any registered Ohioan to participate in our election process, regardless of their location. And this is particularly true for men and women serving overseas who put their lives on the line every day to protect our right to vote. This legislation will remove those obstacles and provide for greater accessibility, which is an always important goal when creating the framework by which our democracy is built upon. This bill is a wonderful example of how we can create sound policy and increase participation in our voting process. Again, I want to thank Representative Dovilla for all of his hard work on this issue and for Chairman Mecklenborg for being very favorable to this legislation. I think this legislation represents where we can work in a bipartisan fashion to increase voting access and confidence in our election process. Again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Representative Stinziano, and I'd like to ask Representative Jarrod if he has any comments at this time as well.
Thank you, Representative Dovilla, and I just want to, as chairman of the Veteran Affairs Committee, I wanted to be here to show my support for this bill. I think it is our duty to do whatever we can to protect the rights of those who are fighting for ours.